Welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated CEO Podcast. My name is Patrick Lyons. I am one of your three co-hosts here with my friends, my colleagues, my cohorts, Leb Tannenbaum and Patsy Feeman. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to have you. Good to be back. I'm excited to introduce our guest today. We have with us Rick Bettger. Now, Rick is a lifelong Omahan who bought his father's three muffler shops back in 2001. Rick's dad started in 1970 as one muffler shop called House of Mufflers and Brakes. And in Rick's 23 years since purchasing the company, now known as Omaha Car Care, Rick has steered the company through significant changes in the industry, through a major rebranding, which we're certainly going to talk about today, through a global pandemic that you may have heard something about, and through unprecedented growth, averaging about 25 to 30% annually over the last 5 to 6 years. So we're going to dig into that as well. Rick and his wife, Jen, have been married for almost 35 years with 3 daughters, 1 grandchild, and 1 on the way. Rick Bettger, welcome to the Frustrated CEO Podcast.
Thank you, Patrick, and it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so Rick, you and I met a little over a month ago. We were connected, had a great conversation, and it was during that the more I learned about you, the more I thought, okay, you have a lot of wisdom and experience to bring to our audience. Our audience tunes in because this is called the Frustrated CEO Podcast. They certainly don't tune in to hear us. They tune in to hear you. So as one frustrated CEO to our listeners, what's keeping you awake these days?
Well, I'm actually very lucky. I sleep pretty well at night, but there is a project that I'm undertaking that I've never done before, Patrick, and maybe some of the listeners have, but it's a retail business. I have 4 existing locations, all of which I bought that were already constructed, and we're embarking on a 5th location that is going to involve some new construction. And so I've never bought land, worked with contractors, built a place from the ground up. And so I don't know if it's keeping me up yet because I haven't really got into the heart of it yet. I'm sure it will as we start the process a little more in depth, but I'm excited, and that will probably keep me up for the next year.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about getting from one shop back in 1970. When you purchased it in 2001, there were 3. You purchased a 4th, if I recall correctly,
right,
somewhere about
2021.
Okay, so not that. Okay, so 4 years ago, and now you're building another. Talk about, in particular, when you buy an existing location.
Right.
You've got a culture, right? You had this culture in these 3 locations that you built in the 20 years, at that point, in the 20 years that you'd had owned the business. How do you embed that culture in this new location? And then, now as you build another one, is it the same process, or do you anticipate it'll be something different?
Yeah. So I work in the auto repair industry, which means auto technicians are our lifeblood. Good people, knowledgeable people. So when I bought this existing business, I didn't fire one person. We kept all the people, and we used the process that we have used with new employees, and actually implemented this process at the time that we did our rebranding, which I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. But it was very intentional in how we want our people to behave when they are working with our clients. So we put those folks through that same kind of process. It's a PowerPoint, it's role playing, it's, had them go to the other stores a few at a time to kind of experience what it was like to work for Omaha Car Care. And what we found is, most of the people really bought in. I mean, I think they thought it was easier than what they were working with before. They had, our business is more centered on how do you take care of the customers that walk in the door. So if you have a personality for that to begin with, then you're going to do really well with us. There were one or two that after a period of time didn't like the pace that we work at. We work a little quicker. We're pretty high volume. So we did end up trading some out. But one of the other big things we did was we took one of our existing store managers and we put them in that store. Because no matter how much you can train them or talk to them about what we're like, it's best to have somebody who's been with us be in there to kind of help direct them. So that's how we tackled it. And frankly, it worked very quickly. That store last year, that was our best store out of the 4. And we grew the volume in that store from the time we purchased it to the end of the second year, 2023. The volume of that store had gone up by over 50%. So it was the people there, though, have been tremendous. And then what was the second part of your question?
No, I just think, do you anticipate what sounds like that worked? Why would you do something different as you
so how do we
store?
And so we have a little bit of runway obviously on opening this new store. We're probably not going to get it open for, I would say, a year from now. We have to go through zoning and blah blah blah, all the kind of stuff. And but we've already identified kind of a transition plan. We are going to take one of our best store managers now we have, and we're going to put him in that store to lead that team that we assemble, and also probably one of the or two of the techs that are already working for us, and put them in that store. And then we'll try and hire new people, which in our industry is fairly challenging. But one of the things that, again, thank God, we got a very good reputation in town as a very good employer. So as we used to struggle to find people, and we would settle for people that probably weren't the best, like we all have, I'm sure. We now have people coming to us who say, "Yeah, I kind of heard about Omaha Car Care. Like, do you guys have any openings?" And so now we have kind of a little stack of resumes that we've identified people out in the field who we've already contacted one, in fact, that may come with us when we get this new store open. So I think that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. So now I mean, I think if anybody listening wasn't paying attention before, I would imagine their ears perked up, because that is clearly the war for talent, right? Attracting and retaining top talent is not only is it right, it's essential to business, but it's critical if you want to win, right? Like, so
it's the largest barrier now for us, frankly, is finding the people. I mean, we think, gosh, we're so good, we could open 10 more of these things. Yeah, well, good luck staffing them.
So how did you build something? How did you build that reputation? What are you doing with your people? Culture, pay, benefits, I think
it's a combination of a lot of things. It's very low stress, because we don't have sales expectations on our folks. We have a very solid sales process that is really centered on building the relationship with that client that walks in the door. I always tell our guys, I go, the best thing that could ever happen is if a new customer walks in the door and we inspect their vehicle and we tell them that everything is perfect for them, because it instantly builds a trust with that new client, especially walking in the door, because people don't know about their car. They don't know what's gone wrong. Our industry has a horrible reputation. Trying to establish just a friendship and a level of trust is how we've built this business, frankly, after our rebranding, because the brand is really built on that relationship. All the marketing, all the everything that we talk about to the mass media and such is really centered on, when you come here, we're going to consult. We're not going to sell. We're going to find out what is the best outcome for you based on what you want to do with that vehicle. And then we're going to tailor our level of recommendations and such to that, not just come in and go, oh, your brakes are bad, you better fix them all right now. You know, we're just not that kind of company. And I think that our employees appreciate that. And we pay really well. That's another thing that is out there in the market. We pay our techs a percentage of everything they produce. And everybody goes, oh, well, they're going to try and jack that up. Well, they're not. Our techs don't talk to the customers. Our techs are incented to work quickly and efficiently. So they're not incented to find more problems with vehicles and such. They're incented to stay on task, to be very skilled at what they do, because we don't want customers coming back because we've screwed something up. A lot of my competitors and such pay on what's called a flat rate schedule, which is a whole automotive industry thing. We did away with that years ago. And so we have, as a rule, we have better technicians who work more efficiently and quickly, and we have less of them because I don't need 6 guys per store. Most times I have 3 to 4, but they work so well and quickly that they get stuff done. And the other thing is we're only open Monday through Friday. We're not open on the weekends. So people hear that are used to working at dealerships and such, where they work 6 days a week, and we go, no, Monday through Friday. So that changed the game for us.
Yeah, here's what's interesting. Okay, like you're adding these pieces together, and then I'll shut up and let my colleagues jump in. You're paying more than everybody else. You're not pushing your people to sell. You're only open 5 days a week, and you've had this unprecedented growth. Like, to me, it flies in the face of what so many leaders are thinking about that they need to do. They need to push more sales. That right, you don't want to lead the market in pay. You know, how do we get people to work more hours? And you're doing the opposite of those things, and you've had unprecedented growth.
And that is solely because of our staff. I mean, we can get into later the whole branding piece of it, but one of the biggest things that you guys all know about brand is if you put a brand out there and you do not execute it, then it's worthless. And so we really concentrate on carrying out the brand's promise to the market, and the market has responded, and our growth is unquestioned.
And is this a legacy from the first 3 shops that you bought, or was this something that you, as you took over those shops, you shifted the way that the work was being done yeah.
I will tell you that kind of customer orientation has never wavered from when my father started the business in 1970.
Okay.
I think what the change has come is, we went to the 5-day work week. That's something my dad probably would be rolling over right now, but it really, it's about the brand speaking. When we rebranded, we really decided intentionally to go after maybe a different type of customer. That may be a good segue to jump into that piece of it, but we have intentionally gone after the customers who value service and time more so than they do their money. We're not the cheapest place in town, as you may guess, but we have intentionally gone after that little bit higher demographic that we did not before. We lived in the coupon world and the lowest price muffler in town kind of mentality. And if I may give you a little bit of history, we also had to overcome this idea. Our name was House of Mufflers and Brakes. And I don't know when the last time any of you put a muffler on a car, but I'm imagining it was over 20 years ago. And so that name was not working anymore. We did a lot of marketing to try and overcome the name, not enhance the name. And so as a result of that, when I bought the company in 2001, it took us 10 years to double the sales of that original 3. And then we hit a flat spot. I mean, we were dead in the water. About 4 years in a row, our sales didn't waver 5% up or down. And I think everybody on this podcast might know that, if you're not growing your business and if you're just maintaining, then your death is imminent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was 2015, after the 2014 sales came in the same as 2011, that I said, we got to do something different here. This is not working. We are spending too much time and money to overcome the name, when in reality, nobody's coming in for a muffler. Everybody in the town does brakes. The biggest growth for us was in a category that I like to call engine repair. So that when your check engine light comes on your dash, if you weren't a customer already of House of Mufflers and Brakes, where we spent a lot of time telling our customers that, hey, we do this kind of work now. But if you're new to the market or you have never heard of us, there's no way you're coming to a muffler and brake shop when your check engine light comes on. So at that point, I decided that we've got to do some rebranding here. We've got to blow this thing up, and we've got to come up with something new that is going to speak to who we really are and to get into a whole new market. So that's when we went through the rebranding process. And that gives you the chance, to say, all right, if we're going to remake ourselves, then who do we really want to speak to? What kind of customer do we want to go after? And so that's when we decided that if we're going to compete, I shifted my competition away from your traditional independent tire and brake shop kind of place, and I'm going after the dealers. And those are the guys that when you buy a car, they give you a bunch of free oil changes. They give you loaner cars. They have nice waiting rooms. They call you when you need service. But they're also the most expensive alternative to getting your car fixed. But those folks who go to them, they don't care about the cost of it. They enjoy the convenience. They think that, well, I have a BMW, so I have to go to the BMW dealer. And so when we said, all right, that might be a good market for us to go after, that's how we built the brand then. We built it on service. The first thing I did when we rebranded is I bought 8 loaner cars and distributed them amongst the 3 shops. And now we're up to 20 because the customers that we're going after, they want to have a loaner car. People bring their car in, they drop it off. We give them the keys to a car and say, see you later. We'll call you when it's done. Those are the customers we're going after because they appreciate when people walk in. We try and learn their names, how many kids are in their family, and engage them in just a conversation like we're having right now. Because that, to me, that's the key in business, really, is if you can form those relationships with your clients, then they don't really care how much it costs as much as they want to recommend us to their friends because they're proud of the relationship that they have with their auto repair guy. I always tell the story about my dentist. I have been going to the same dental practice since I was 14 years old. I'm 61 now. I went to my dentist's dad, and now I go to his son, and his son and I are very good friends. But think about the most miserable place you can go in the world, where they inflict pain upon you every time they turn around. It's the damn dentist. I've been through root canals and teeth pullings and all kinds of stuff with those folks. But I don't mind going there because of the relationships I've built with them, because they're friends. And I don't know what they charge. I have no idea. But all I know is that I have been going there for 50 years or whatever, because I appreciate the relationship. And that's the kind of thing that I want to build with our customers. It's not fun to get your car fixed, but we try and make it pleasant.
Yeah.
It's great.
So we're focusing on the external customer, and and it's great. I really appreciate it. But there's the other side of the coin is the internal customer, how people inside the company treat each other, what's contagious about this training perhaps. And, everybody to some degree has a little bit of competitiveness in them. How is it when you select a manager to move to a new store? Tell us a little bit more about the internal customer culture.
The key hires are personality types.
Okay.
For the people who are interfacing with the customers. We used to use a tool called Predictive Index, which I think was created here in Omaha. But I don't have to give the test anymore. We can interview people and kind of understand what their personalities are like. And we have a little set of questions that we can kind of get to the root of that. But those are the folks. If the store managers are of that correct personality type, then we've got a huge win there. As far as the technicians they are a completely different personality type. You have your extroverts and your introverts, of course. The techs are more of an introverted type. They're very methodical. They like to follow a process. They are meticulous about what they do, and they don't really care for a ton of interaction between each other or anyone else. I say that like they're a bunch of ogres. They're certainly not, but it's funny how you can pick out the personality types. And then frankly, the way they interact, and believe me, we're not perfect, but the way the managers then interact with the techs, as long as we're all keeping the focus on the outcome, the customers, because personalities are always going to conflict. I've never seen a way around that, but if something does arise, we always turn the attention back to the customer. How do we, hey, I know I'm telling you to do this, but think about the shoes of the guy, this car you're fixing right now. Let's get back on that focus. And generally any conflict that arises is calmed down once we all refocus on who we're trying to help here.
Rick, I mentioned second generation owner, right? Purchased it from your dad. What are some of the unique challenges that face? I think we talked about this when you and I spoke again last month. Just the challenges from second generation, the number of family-owned businesses that don't make it to the second generation. What are some of the unique challenges that you faced?
I grew up putting mufflers on. So I had a little bit of familiarity, of course, with the business to begin with. But I had worked for the previous 13 years in a different business that my father had owned. And I was a journalism major in college. I had no business training whatsoever. I came in when we started the previous business. I did all the jobs. I was a forklift driver. I was a I was a customer service guy on the counter until I kind of created a marketing position for myself. Once the company grew, I said, you know, we need some marketing here. That company grew to a fairly large, you know, for me anyway, it was fairly large, about $12 million business. Got purchased by a venture capital group. And at that point, my dad exited the business, and they put me in charge of marketing for their entire company, which was 3 locations, 3 businesses such as ours, in various parts of the country. So I learned a lot from those folks. I really did. But one of the mistakes they made, I saw, was not really learning about each of the businesses and how they functioned. They just came in with a set of ideas and applied them immediately to all of their locations. And I saw that happen, and I was, you know, in leadership in that group. So I watched it happen. Did not think it was a great idea. So I left after 2 years to buy my dad's stores. So having that experience allowed me to come in to the new business, you know, which was not new, obviously, but new for me. So the first thing that I did was not do anything. I didn't come in with an agenda. I did not have a grand idea on how I was going to revolutionize the muffler and brake industry. What I did the entire first year was measure. I built some spreadsheets. I learned the data that was being spit out by our system. I took those numbers and I created some measurements, some metrics, so that I could learn what the current state of the business was. And I'd been in the industry for my whole life, so I'm very familiar with the trends that were coming in the industry. And then I compared that to what we were at that time. And then I started to show it to the guys, because the guys, you know, my dad, you know, God bless him, also like me, except I went to college and he didn't. He was a complete entrepreneur from the beginning, but not terribly sophisticated on things like measurements and metrics and process and those kinds of things that I learned, frankly, in my 2 years of working for the VC group. So that's all I did. I measured things. And then once a month, I would create this PowerPoint presentation and I would start showing the guys the numbers. And they were learning things right along with me. They didn't know how much exhaust we sold, or how much, you know, what our profit percentage was, or how much our labor ratio was. And those are just things that I inherently learned, that I just started measuring. So as we would meet monthly and roll these numbers out, really for the first year, they were presented, frankly, without comment, because I wanted them to get up to speed. They had to become more professional. They had to become more savvy to what they were doing, and our processes too. Because the other thing I learned in my brief time there was process management. You know, how quickly are we doing things? How efficiently? What is the impact of what we're doing have on the customer? All of those things came into play as I bought the business and started measuring and then showing numbers to the guys. And then we got to the point where we're like, okay, the trend is mufflers are going away. How are we going to replace that income? Well, you're going to do it through engine work. Okay, well then what do we need to do more engine work? Well, we need to get equipment. We need to have training. We need to market it. All of those things then and how do we improve our process too along the way.
Mhm.
So the guys got really good at it as they were learning right along with me. So from there, the business kind of took off, and that's when we started growing. You know, in the 2000s, that's when things started to kind of take off. But then we hit a lull, and that's what I explained earlier about we got to change the brand.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Rick, everybody talks about dealing with change. I don't know that we've yet talked about, but I know I've always loved cars, and I probably had a ridiculous number of brands of cars, even a Peugeot.
wow,
And
that's getting down there.
so, and technology is advancing and changing, and we've got hybrids, and we've got electric cars, and we've got things coming down the pike, and then you've got AI being built into cars. From the outside, it looks exciting, maybe, but I don't know what it looks like from the inside. And I just wondered, how you keep your staff, your techs flexible, the learning curve. How do you support the learning curve? Because, and that's only one area of change,
Right.
But let's talk about that.
You're right, Lev. And it sounds daunting, as especially to the outsider who think, "Oh my gosh, all this stuff is happening with cars." Well, it's been happening. It's been happening ever since I've been in the industry. So we bite it off a little bit at a time as it really pertains to us. The biggest expense for us in this is, we have these little, they're, lack of a better word, I'll call them computers. And cars run on computers nowadays.
Yep.
So we have to have software updates to keep up to pace with what the manufacturers are putting out. And so every year we invest $15,000-$20,000 in new software for all of our equipment and such. But the reality of it is, we don't see cars that were built in 2024 a whole lot. We see the ones that were built probably in 2020. So we have some time to kind of catch up. And our techs are very good about staying up on the technology. We subscribe to a lot of services that allow us to put a problem into the computer and say, this is what I'm encountering. How should I go about trying to diagnose this? So the software that we use is really helpful in keeping us kind of up to speed on some of the problems that may arise that we haven't encountered before. But it isn't as daunting as it sounds. I mean, people say, "Oh, electric cars are coming." Like, well, that's in Omaha. That's not coming as quickly as it is maybe on the coasts where you guys might live. So it's not as a big a deal. It might be 15, 20 years from now. EVs might have more of a share of the market. But in the meantime, there's still a lot of vehicles out there that need brakes and fluids and engine repair. So that doesn't scare me as much. Probably because I'll be old and dead before that happens. But it's something that we bite off a little bit at a time.
Yes, that's great. So I have one more follow on with that. So yesterday, literally, I was a customer with mechanics who I have a really good relationship with.
Great.
And I knew there was a lot of work that needed to be done on our truck, our vehicle, but I didn't expect it to exceed $1,800. And when 2550 came in, I was, I gasped. And so because of the relationship that we have, which is great, it wasn't the kind of issue that it could have been, but do you have anything to share with people listening in, and this would be true maybe for every industry, where you set the right expectation, so that the customer isn't gasping for air,
Right.
in whatever field you're in, whether, you're going to your dentist who gives
The
you
dentist. Exactly. It so much of that. Those are worst case scenarios for us, because I hate those moments where we have to tell. I mean, you might imagine, I've lived here my whole life. I have a pretty vast network of friends and things, and I'll walk up to the counter in one of the stores one day and I'll see a friend of mine has an invoice sitting on the counter and it's like $3,000, and I just like, oh God, no. Oh God, I don't want to have to explain that one at the golf course next week. So it's how you handle it, and you said it perfectly. You have a trust and a relationship with those folks that made you think, you know what, they're not trying to screw me here or something. I have a level of comfort and trust built up with those folks, and that's why I always tell the guys. I mean, that's what's most important, because there will come a time when somebody wants to hang on to a vehicle, and we'll tell people too. I have friends that I'm saying, look, I'm not taking another dollar from you on this vehicle. Get rid of it, because it's like a death knell on this thing, and I'm sick of taking your money, and I don't want you mad at me. So get rid of it.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be moments like that where folks are just in sticker shock. And so we always try and say, look, okay, here's the bare essential. You should have this done to make you safe. And then we can plan on when we're going to do the rest of it out. But I don't want your wife driving this car, or your daughter driving this car, or your son, going off back to college with this car in this condition. So we need to do this and this. And if they trust us and they know that we have their best interest in heart, then generally that's a pretty easy conversation. But as you might guess, in our industry, we encounter that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Especially when that check engine light comes on and they come in and go, oh my, it doesn't seem like I'm accelerating very quickly. They're like, oh boy. This is going to be bad.
Patsy, it looked like you had a question before.
Well, I'm curious about trends. You've mentioned the value of trends, and it's easy to put your head down and just fix cars. And yet you, several times in this conversation, have mentioned how noticing a trend has helped you stop and acknowledge and shift your industry. I wonder how, how you happen to do that.
Yeah. And a lot of it is, I'll tell you what, cars are built better now than they used to be. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, you would get a tailpipe on your car, like your 1972 Monte Carlo. I would bend those pipes all day at work. One day we had a computerized pipe bender, and I would hang up 20 of them on a rack, and they'd be gone in 2 weeks because those stupid things rusted out every year and a half or so. Brake pads were made of asbestos. Those would wear out every year. We've had to adapt all the way to technology for the last 50 years. And when those things are coming, I can see it. So we say, all right, we have to adapt. So one of the big adaptations we did was we need to get more into the maintenance side of things, because things don't break as much as they used to. So we need to learn how to maintain vehicles better. So we made a real conscious effort of that back in the 20 years ago, to where we started to measure how much maintenance per car are we doing that comes in, and we would track, here's how much maintenance we did, here's how many cars came in, and that would average to whatever, $10 a car. And so we still measure that today, because that's one of the things that we really consult our customers on, is how do we keep this thing running, depending on how long you want to keep it, who's driving it, how far away do they drive all the time. let's talk about maintaining that vehicle. So we shifted some of that lost sales we used to have from mufflers and brakes, and mufflers used to make up 38% of the business 30 years ago. Now it's less than 3%. So we've had to really anticipate those kinds of things and then say, all right, so where can we continue to make money on? So a lot of that is the engine repair that I mentioned, but a lot of it's maintenance. It's just being more. That's what dealers do. I mean, they really encourage you to come in for your 60,000 mile checkup and have this done and that done. And so we always tell folks, let's take a look at 60,000 miles on what your vehicle needs. You might need a timing belt or, something like that. But it keeps catastrophes from happening. And it keeps revenue coming in for us too.
Well, I'm hearing an extra facet, I guess, of building the relationship in that you're actually working. You're not just welcoming somebody into your shops. You're actually working with them to create a plan for their car and the longevity of their car.
Very much so. Yeah. And that's part of the relationship. I mean, and that's, we get a lot of customers now from dealerships where they come in and they, hey, the dealer told me that I had to have all this done. So we'll say, all right, why don't we inspect all those things first to see if you actually need those things? And then let's talk about your plan for this vehicle. Because if the dealer says, well, you need shocks and struts, and then they tell us, well, I'm going to keep this car another year. Then we go, you know what? Don't do shocks and struts. It's very expensive. If you're going to keep the car for 5 years, absolutely do it, because you'll notice a difference. But it's a huge investment that you won't really see the benefit of if you're going to get rid of the car. And it's those kinds of things that we go back and forth with our customers about that really builds the relationship, builds the trust, and it causes word of mouth events. It causes trust. They tell their neighbor, they tell their kids. We really try and have multi-generations of families coming to us that we wouldn't if they didn't trust us.
Rick, I know that you're very involved in the community, right? Deeply involved in education for Omaha's underserved communities. You've been, I think, close to a dozen years on the Q's Fund Board of Directors. You can talk about that. Talk about and share your perspective on a CEO's role or a business's role in being present and giving back to the community.
Well, it's funny you should ask that. I had lunch yesterday with a gentleman friend of mine that he's involved in a program with our underserved kids in the Catholic high schools. We have some Catholic high schools here in town that serve more of the underserved kids and families. And so we put a program together to bring those kids into the shop, because a career path is a tremendous option in the trades for a lot of these kids. And so we had a group of 15 kids come in this summer just to experience what it's like to work in an auto repair shop, for example. And they did the same at a body shop. They did the same at a diesel mechanic place. But it was opening their eyes to the opportunities that are within this industry. And so when I tell those kids that, a lot of my guys that work for us here, they're making six figures, and their eyes kind of open up and they don't realize the potential of that type of work. You don't have to go to college for it. You have to train, but it's an absolute option for them. And so my involvement in that type of work is really centered around the inner city Catholic schools here in town, because I believe they do great work in setting these kids on a different course than ordinarily they might be able to. And it's about breaking the cycle of poverty that has existed within some of these families for generations. So it's kind of just opening their eyes to a different path, giving them a values-based education that is centered on how you treat each other. What kind of values do you have as a person, setting expectations that they might not have elsewhere, and putting them on a different path that will lead to success. And I see that as one of the most powerful ways to transform a community. And that's why I love where I live. I grew up here. I want to see this town continue to grow, and giving those kids the chance to come along with that is very important to me.
It's great.
Heartfelt one to end on.
Yes.
That's Rick's mic drop moment. That's awesome. All right, listener, this is the part of every episode where we get practical. We want you to hopefully not only learn some things in this episode, but apply things, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. So, Rick, as you think about our frustrated listener out there, or senior leader, or someone who aspires to be a senior leader, what are 2 or 3 real nuggets of wisdom or pieces of advice that you would have?
I'm by far the least wise person in this room, but one of the things that I've thought about on that question, Patrick, is when we were flat, when we were not growing, it took a leap to say, all right, we're going to blow this thing up, and we are going to change the name of this business and everything about it. That was incredibly frightening. At one point, you asked me what kept me up at night. That kept me up for 2 years, because I will tell you that it did not start well. And I kind of anticipated that. But when you change the name of an existing business, everybody thinks that you sold it. They think that the owners have gone away and everything's different. And I don't want to go there anymore. So in 2016, when we changed the name, 2016 and 2017, our sales were down from 2016. So I thought, oh boy, I have screwed this up. This is not going to end well. And then literally in the next 2 years, we grew about 40%, which kind of eased those fears a little bit. But I mean, it was a rough go for a while. So I think if you are a business owner who has hit a flat spot and it is persistent, it's a big leap, but you've got to do something to really shake it up. And that might mean going after a different type of customer. And to do that, you have got to create a brand that will speak to that different customer. So I would recommend making that leap, but do it in a very thoughtful way. I had a very good partner in my advertising agency that really took me through a process that made me consider who I wanted for a customer. And we took it from there, and it turned out well, thankfully.
Wonderful. Anything else?
No, I've had a wonderful time. Thank you both all for listening to me drone on.
Oh, of course. All right. I'm looking at my colleagues. Who wants to go next?
Go ahead, Leb.
Okay. I've got many. So, Rick, I've got pages. But from those pages, I just love the idea of building trust with clients intentionally, with the notion that we consult to them, we don't sell to them.
I think that's important in an industry where there might not be, where there's a level of distrust, especially coming into it.
Yes. Yes. I took note of a brand with a promise that is executed upon as essential.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So you rebranded, you knew what the promises were, and you did execute, and even then it wasn't a fast leap,
Oh, who was
but
not?
it paid off. So and then there's a lot of attention in a tough market around hiring, and the fact that you maybe pulled from predictive index, but you had a sense of the personality type that you wanted for the different positions in the organization. To me was really something that all CEOs would benefit to hear again if they have heard it before, and recognize that there are certain personality types attracted to certain types of work, and honoring that, you can get really good people in the right places, in the right seats.
Right.
Absolutely.
I was touched by the that you actually create transition plans for your internal customers. So when you're transitioning a manager to another store or something, that you actually create a transition plan for your people, not just your business. The importance of giving people the development and the support they need, not only in the skills they need to do the job, but the behaviors they need to do the job.
Yeah.
I too had a few pages, Rick. So if you were concerned that you weren't going to say anything smart, I captured quite a bit. I was again, because I think it's like it kind of flips the script, that stress and pay may be significant barriers between attracting the talent that you really are looking for and not being able to find them. And there are quite a few CEOs who I think we undervalue the importance or the impact that stress has. You said like you alleviated the stress, you paid your people more, and wow, suddenly you're able to attract more people. And by the way, you needed fewer of them. I just think that's wisdom for everybody else. More wisdom, and this is for whether it's existing CEOs or new CEOs or new leaders coming in. That there's real wisdom in coming into a new situation with the goal of just learning and measuring. Right, just learn and measure. That you don't have to jump into action. And as you explained with the VC experience, sometimes jumping into action. In fact, what you didn't get into, but I can share the rest of the story. You said within 5 years, you told me in a different conversation, within 5 years, those businesses that had been acquired were out of business. Like that VC company ran it out of business. So
Correct.
Cautionary tale about not jumping into action, but actually measuring and just paying attention. And then the last one I'll add, and I have more too, but the last one I'll piggybacks on that. Share those metrics and measures with your people, right? Teach them, learn together, bring them up to speed, and then engage them in the work of process management, process improvement, following and responding to trends, and ultimately growing the business. I just think the more your people are educated, I don't see how that harms. So we'll go around the horn again. Anybody want to add anything else?
I'll add one more.
Okay.
Again, so much is being talked about attracting and retaining talent, and a lot is being talked about the younger workforce wanting more work-life balance. And wherever this came from for you to decide that the business was only going to be open from Monday through Friday, just kind of hit some chord in me to say, well, that changes the game for a lot of people in terms of work-life balance. It didn't throw us into, hybrid stuff, and it didn't throw us into PTO, and it didn't throw us into all these other arenas where people try to compete. You just laid out a whole new game plan, simple, straightforward, and it's paying off. So again, CEOs listening, that was to me a sign of a piece of brilliance and a game changer.
Well, it's a retail business, so that kind of thinking is not available to everyone, unfortunately, probably. But for us, it was an intentional. I studied what kind of customers we were getting on Saturdays, and learned that most of those folks would come Monday through Friday anyway.
Mm.
So we just made that call, and that's really when things with the staff really changed. I mean, they just really appreciated that.
Yeah.
There you go. There's more of that metrics and measures, like paying attention before you do anything.
Mhm.
That's anything you want to add?
Nope, I'm good.
Good. All right, Rick, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
We learned a lot. If someone is interested, well, first of all, if someone lives in the Omaha area, then for sure, if Omaha Car Care is not your service provider, then I'll reiterate what I told you the last time we talked, Rick. I'm upset that I don't live in Omaha, because I would be driving my cars over.
I know. I wish Lib did. That's for sure.
Yeah, right. That's right. So definitely. And now, if anyone is interested in learning more about you or getting in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Oh, it's easy. It's Rick at omahacarcare.com. That's
Excellent.
my email address. And, you can Google me or whatever. I'm be thrilled to talk to anyone.
Excellent. And listener, you know this now, but you can connect with any of the three of us, Leb, Patsy, and myself, at leb@thefrustratedceo.com, or Patsy at thefrustratedceo.com, or Patrick at thefrustratedceo.com. Drop us an email. Let us know what you like, what you don't. Let us know if you're interested in being a guest on a future episode. Leb and Patsy, thank you again for another solid episode under our belts.
Thank you.
It was inspiring.
Yes.
A lot of wisdom, Rick.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
I'll tell my wife.
She can listen in a few weeks. Excellent. All right, listener, thank you for sticking with us to the end of another episode, and we will see you again next time on the Frustrated CEO Podcast.